Yep.
Excellent. At 6 o'clock, I'm going to call to order the virtual monthly village board meeting for the Village of Sister Bay for Tuesday, December 20th, 2022. Roll call, Zashki here.
Baker here.
Bell here.
Birdo here.
We're here.
Demko. And Lyons.
Lions here.
Okay, and Cox is excused. For those of us who would like to join in, we're going to stand and on the count of three, recite the Pledge of Allegiance. 1, 2, 3. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic that stands one nation under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Heidi, for the graphics. I will motion that we approve the agenda as published. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I will motion that we approve the meeting minutes for November 15th, 2022, regular village board meeting as published.
The 15th or the 16th?
It is the 15th. I have a typo in that document.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 6, comments, correspondence, and concerns from the public. Do we have any comments or concerns from the public on a non-agenda item this evening? Hearing none, we'll confirm with Heidi that correspondence has been summarized in our packets.
Yes.
Heidi, was there anything additional that came through that you wanted to mention?
I did receive a letter that was forwarded to the board members this morning from Ken Church, who doesn't have audio on his computer.
Okay.
Were you able to take a look at that?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
thank you. Okay, we're moving into agenda item 7. We have several public hearings with discussion and action relating to ordinances. The reason we have the need for public hearings on each one of these ordinances is that they zoning is affected on each one of these. So we will take them individually, beginning with 7A, ordinance number 307, the annexing of land in the town of Liberty Grove, the sports complex property. At 6:03 p.m. I am going to open the public hearing to any commentary related to the annexing of land in the town of Liberty Grove at the sports complex property. Hearing no public commentary at 6:03 p.m., I'm going to close the public hearing. And I'm going to refresh the board's memory of page 17 in the packet. The ordinance before us actually serves to correct a procedural error from when the land was supposedly annexed approximately 40 years ago. There's no new land other than what we thought was originally annexed that's part of this ordinance. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second by Baker. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. At 6:04 p.m., I will open up the public hearing on ordinance number 308, an amendment to chapter 66, the zoning regarding camping, living quarters and accessory building, duplexes, public improvements on private land. Do we have any comments, questions from the public related to ordinance number 308 as proposed? Hearing none at 6:05 PM, I'll close the public hearing and move along to the board for approval, ordinance number 308.
Denise has her hand up.
Denise?
I'm a little confused why we're holding a second public hearing when the public hearings were at Plan Commission last week.
So I can explain that. When it comes to zoning ordinance, it has to go before the Plan Commission and the village board. So it's an ordinance, so it needs the review of both of them. If it were just an ordinance like on the streets or to a different chapter, then we don't need a public hearing on it.
Okay, so
But we need,
were we doing this before? Having two?
That's my understanding. That's how you've been doing them. These were not published. The second one, this one was not published in the paper as a legal notice. Just the ones that went to the Plan Commission went through that process. And then my understanding is you've been bringing them back for adoption before the board and taking the public testimony on them.
Okay, that's kind of,
It doesn't matter if anything, it's overkill. So
okay, it's kind of news to me, but okay.
I can check on that too, but it
All right.
doesn't to do it. It's more transparent.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
So the ordinance before us here, number 308, is to ensure the code is enforceable by clarifying timelines for camping. And it adds necessary definitions related to living quarters and accessory buildings. It also clarifies duplexes are allowed in the R2 zoning district. And it also creates language to protect the landowner when public improvements are made to private property. I will motion that we approve ordinance 308 as noted. Do we have a second?
second,
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Hey,
One nay. Motion carried. Item number 7C, ordinance number 309, an amendment to the chapter 66 zoning regarding uses in the Park District. Public hearing was held on this matter on December 15th. At that hearing, the Plan Commission recommended approval by the village board. When the code was comprehensively revised, the Park District was not reviewed. This proposed amendment cleans up the code by addressing what is allowed in a park district. I will open up the public hearing at 6:08 PM to anyone who wishes to make any public commentary. Hearing none at 6:08 PM, I will close the public hearing and I will motion that we approve ordinance number 309 as noted tonight.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
aye,
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 7D, ordinance number 310 regarding outdoor entertainment facilities. A public hearing was held on this matter on December 15th, 2022. At that hearing, the Plan Commission recommended approval of the amendment as revised. Earlier this spring, the Plan Commission began the process of reviewing their noise ordinances to determine whether adjustments should be made. And after several drafts and a public hearing, the commission revisited the proposals and decided to instead create a land use category outdoor entertainment facility. The ordinance establishes the use where allowed and the standards to be reviewed. It clarifies what noise standards apply to facilities, and there's also an advisory note that any legal outdoor entertainment facility in existence prior to the code amendment would be considered grandfathered and not have to adhere to the new standards in the ordinance. However, as a grandfathered use, if they were to expand or significantly modify their operations, they would be subject to the non-conforming use rules in Chapter 66. At 6:10 PM, I will open the public hearing to commentary on proposed ordinance number 310. If anyone would like to make a comment, Bjorn? Please
Hi,
proceed.
everyone. Attorney Bjorn Johnson. I'm going to be speaking on behalf of ALS tonight for this matter. So I just had a couple comments that I just wanted to raise at the village board level, because I don't think this testimony was going to be particularly heard at the plan commission level, and I just wanted to raise this. I just wanted to make some clarifications that I think the board should note as it relates to how these restrictions are to be read in concert with the proposed amendments for chapter 30 under nuisances, and that relates to page 59 and page 60 in your agenda packets. So more particularly under section 30.11 sub B sub 2, there's changes being proposed such as, unless permitted elsewhere in the municipal code, the amplification of noise should not be unreasonable, yada, yada, yada. But then there's a second sentence under sub 2 there, which says said noise shall not exceed 75 decibels as measured as an average throughout a period of 30 seconds. So I would hope that at least for our purposes at ALS, that provision should be read in concert with the section immediately before that. So that would be sub 30.11 sub A, loud noises prohibited. So our position generally would be that that particular 75 decibel reading would only apply if it were to be plainly audible within a single family home. But I just want to clarify for purposes of any future ambiguities that, and especially for the record here in the minutes, that the village board was adopting this provision with that understanding that first of all the current establishments would be grandfathered and prevented from getting this provision to apply to them. But then B, also that this particular provision would only apply as an unreasonable nuisance if it were plainly audible within a single family home. So, I mean, I would hope to see some discussion about that from the village board level, just so we can resolve any future ambiguities about this process. But other than that, I think we've expressed all our concerns at the plan commission, and I think it's pretty much ready to go from Al's perspective. So with that, I think that's all I have to say.
Julie?
Just to clarify, that section doesn't really apply to Al's because he's covered by the grandfathered clause.
Okay.
What happened is he had a development agreement, and that development agreement had specific standards in it that trumps anything that's out there. And as long as he goes in compliance with that development agreement and the code, he's always going to be covered by that. It's when he closes for a period of more than 12 months or he does something to jeopardize that he's going to lose that grandfathered status and then revert to these new codes that are being implemented.
Okay, I think that's all we really need. So thanks.
Thank you.
Do we have any other public commentary or questions on the proposed ordinance number 310? Hearing none at 6:14 PM, I'll close the public hearing. Do we have any discussion or a motion to approve? Denise?
Bjorn brings up an interesting point, and I did not go back to look onto page 59 that he was referencing about single family home, because within our downtown business district and the transition district, is single family home actually in the wording? Because I thought that's a pretty interesting clarification that some other business could not be complaining on another business. This was really to help protect the residential homes. And I was just wondering, since he brought up that point, would it make sense to add that verbiage in there, or is that overkill? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I think what he's referring to, I don't have the full code right up on my computer right there, but I think what he's referring to is the nuisance code and what was always there.
Okay,
He's not referring to anything that we're changing.
okay, all right. Thank you. Sorry, I was just trying to piece it all together there. Okay.
Any other discussion? I will motion that we approve ordinance number 310 as noted this evening.
I'll second it, Rob.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Moving along to agenda item 8. These ordinances do not require a public hearing because they don't affect zoning. We'll go through these individually, starting with 8A, ordinance number 296, an amendment to chapter 66 of the mobile food vendor courts.
Rob, can I just make a comment here? This one is a zoning one, but this one has already went to the board for that hearing. So this is the second time it's come back to the board. That's why it's not up with the section above it.
Okay, I'm with you, Julie. Thank you for that clarifier. Okay, so we had a public hearing on this earlier in the fall. It got forwarded to the board for adoption. And then it was sent back to the Plan Commission to add language about formula businesses. And in November, that revision was made and approved by the Plan Commission. This is a proposal creating rules to allow food trucks in Sister Bay, but would require that unless it's an SBAA event, the food trucks must be in a court. We also have the established rules for such a court. Chad?
Reading this code, with the exception of SBA events, which have been having food trucks since I've been around anyway, it just reads as something that is almost impossible for somebody to pull off. I counted 7 restaurants in my short time on Land Map that have less acreage, square footage than what's proposed here, for which could only be 4 food trucks, because 2,000 square feet divided by 4,500 comes out to 4.44444. So you couldn't have 5, you could have 4. I'm not sure why those numbers are so aligned that way. I just think this isn't reasonable. There's not a lot of thought put into it. It's a code created to make sure it never happens because people don't want it to happen. And I just expect more out of our code, out of our planning, out of our board, than to come up with crap that nobody can really pull off. I volunteered to help write some of this code with another restaurant owner, right? You'd think we'd be the ones fighting against such food trucks, but we're from a generation where we realize, yeah, they're pretty cool, and that's how the world works. And this is just embarrassing. It's embarrassing. 20,000 square feet paved. Show me the math, show me the business model that you guys dreamed up that somebody could pull this off. Because some of you guys are practical people. You have businesses, you have a lot of business background, you have a lot of background in the service industry, in the food industry. Tell me the business model on how somebody can pull this off.
Well, what I can tell you, Chad, is the majority of what you mentioned are some of the reasons why I have voted no against this from the time it was originally brought forth at the Plan Commission. I don't know if you were at the prior meeting when we dealt with this off the top of my head, but I have clarified every time this has come up that I've been in opposition to it since it first came, for some of the reasons you've mentioned. As one of your points that I don't agree with is that, when you said that it reads like there wasn't a lot of time put into it, in my
Well, there was a
opinion-
lot of time put into
Yeah,
it.
in my opinion, it was overanalyzed. We took a smooth running process in the village where if a business wanted to have a food truck, the food truck was there. Between the business and the food truck, it got worked out. It became clear from those who visited it that it was embraced by the community, by locals, by residents. And then we transmogrified from that into a food court would be a tourist destination that would be beneficial to the village, which I'm on public record as saying I don't agree with. I think how we have had this, to your point, Chad, how we have had this was a benefit to the community, and people were involved both as providers, hosts, and customers. And I agree with you. I believe anyone can read this as a roadmap to it never happening. I'm in no way saying that anyone intended for it to be that or that anyone intends for it to be that, but it certainly can be read that way. And I could not disagree with anyone in the public who chose to perceive it as such. Denise?
What I think throughout all the conversations that the Plan Commission had, and somebody else on the Plan Commission can correct me if I'm wrong, the majority of members did not want to see food trucks scattered on all kinds of current businesses that would create more density. In the B1 district where these are allowed, there is a 20,000 square foot minimum lot size to have any business. We did talk about that long and hard, saying that that was a lot of space. We then Julie came up with the 4,500 so that you'd be able to have 4 on each lot. 20,000 square foot lot to create a court if you wanted to. There could be 1, there could be 2, there could be 3, there could be 4. This does not preclude some businesses from having, depending upon the size of their lots, from having 1 to 4 on their current property. Because of the size of the lot, so they could have another business on there, but because they're a large lot, they still have additional space to incorporate some of the additional parking that would be required and whatnot. So we didn't want to see a food truck in front of every business. And that was the thinking and the conversation that we kind of narrowed in on when we came up with that criteria. I don't know if that you accept that or not accept that, Chad, but unless somebody else from Plan Commission can disagree, that's how I remember our conversation.
I recall vividly that, yes, Denise, that's how the conversation went, and the majority of people on the Plan Commission felt that way. Again, I had a dissenting view. I feel that, the fear or the concern for there being quote unquote a food truck in front of every business, to me, would have then been or now been relevant if we were dealing with this because issues had come forth to the village because 7 businesses had food trucks going on. And it hasn't been that way. We've at the most had 1 food truck in operation occasionally. So, but yes, the majority, I agree. Yes, Denise, the majority of people on the plan commission did share your viewpoint. Chad?
I understand that, but and the idea of having a food truck court would be great, right? I like, maybe the historical society could do it, but even at that size and that limit, it would really limit how cool an event could be on a Wednesday night, say food trucks in a certain area. But the idea that having them in different areas in the community is a problem. I don't see that being a problem. I think if we can all agree, the more things lumped up right next to each other generally doesn't play as well as things spread out. I think a food truck in an area where there's public bathrooms, some parking, the idea that I own a restaurant and I couldn't even have one on my property is a joke of a limitation of a code. I mean, we're licensed restaurants, food safe facilities. I can't even put one on my facility. That's just crazy. It's what we do for a living, and I'm not allowed to do it. I understand you put a lot of time into this, and again, it's one of these things where, you know, I hope somebody gets 20,000 square feet and brings in 4 semi trailers and offers food for $2 and just closes everybody down, because there's the lack of thought of our code is what creates these people dodging code instead of encouraging creativity and out of the box. It's the same old thing. I'm not going to vote for this.
We had Mary's hand up and then Denise. Mary?
Yeah, I also just think that there's like plenty to go around. I don't understand why we wouldn't want to like foster more, like if we're gonna draw in all of these people to Door County as a destination, why wouldn't we want to, you know, provide them with various experiences so they could like go to a bar and eat, or they could get something to go from a food truck to eat. And that just, it seems like a very convenient way to satiate people and then potentially alleviate whatever the restaurants are going through, which is craziness. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Mary. Denise?
I think that because we didn't have a whole lot of food trucks operating within the village at this time, that
We had them banned and we've fought
that-
them till
that we were
this
trying
time.
to be, and you brought this up, I think at one of the last meetings we had, Chad, that we should be being more proactive instead of reactive. Now, I guess my question would be, to make me understand, Chad, is I don't, for the food truck that has been currently operating within the village limits in the B1 district, I don't see why they can't continue as long as they get a permit to do that. I don't see any hindrance in this code that would not allow them to continue. So my question is, you know, I guess to you and Mary, is what is it that you see in here that's going to restrict someone from operating a food truck?
That's the only place probably that would fit the bill to operate a food truck. It's only in that business district. That's one of the few lots probably big enough to do it. I can't, in our district, I can't put a food truck. I can't put a food truck in my parking lot and have a restaurant. I mean, how could that code not even allow for that? It's asinine to me. It's that a real restaurant can't even do it. You know, like there was no thought, and you thought about up top because there is one up there, and this has nothing to do with that. I have no problem with that food truck. I think the food's great. I think it's in a good location. I'm just talking about how poor this code is, regardless of that one food truck. And because maybe that food truck may want to park somewhere else one day. Maybe that relationship doesn't last forever, right? So we got to think about all those factors, not just because it works for the one person maybe doing it, but what about when that location isn't available anymore or something happens, life happens. I'd like to see all the places that would qualify if there are others. I assume you did that research because it would be great to know, hey, here are the list of all the areas that this could be done in.
Julie did.
Yeah. What about why not in the B3 district? Why not in the B2 district? You know, you want this district to be business transitional. But 20,000 square feet parking lot there is probably pretty hard to do. But one food truck and a commercial lot, maybe if a retail store was there, is probably pretty possible. There was no thought to B2 or B3. Those are business districts.
Rob? Can I just comment
Yeah,
on that?
Julie, go, please.
Yeah. First of all, I think everybody has to understand right now a food truck is not allowed within the village limits. This was a way to get them allowed so they could operate legally. But we also looked, there was a lot of thought put into the code. There was a lot of research put into the code. The committee members offered a lot on this code as well. Thought, you know, we don't allow food trucks right now, but let's look at what the trends are. And let's look at what zoning looks at: safety, access, overcrowding, density, etc. The thought was allowing food trucks downtown would intensify the parking issues that we have and the overcrowding issues that we have. And it would add to the lack of open space that is needed on a lot. So they looked, we all looked pretty seriously at that and said, do we want to intensify the issues that we have downtown? And no, with zoning, you're not supposed to make it worse. You're supposed to make it better. So we looked at, well, where would it make sense to have these then? And we looked at other food truck courts. We looked at other codes. We looked at cities where it was successful, and came up with the codes that we have. There's several properties that can have food truck courts. I don't know if you've ever been on vacation or go to a bigger city, you'll see like a block where they're all operating, they're all fenced off, they got the night lights. That was the intent, to try and create that that vibe, I guess, and to meet the trends and be proactive, but do it in a responsible way where we knew sewer and water was taken care of, there was safe access, noise would be regulated so we didn't cause problems with that. There was a lot of back and forth on the code, and in absence of this code or a different code, people have to understand food trucks are not allowed. And if there is one operating, it's been operating in violation. So hopefully, if we want food trucks, somebody's got to come up with a code that allows them then.
Julie, I know Gibraltar went through this, they denied them and they lost, right? We know that's not gonna hold up. So that's just a really,
Well,
yeah, I don't even know how to comment on that.
Yeah.
I've been to a lot of these cities, a lot of these areas, most of them aren't paved. A lot of them were put on blighted lots, right? And then they put the hanging lights up and park a bunch of food trucks and cars pull up on gravel. I've been to many of them.
Yeah.
They're great. I have nothing against that concept, but I think that's just one concept. And I think the idea that you got to pave the whole thing takes away from that concept. What do we need to pave that for? What is our obsession with paving? I don't get it. I would have loved to have seen how many people on planning commission and what food courts they've been to and pictures of them and experiences. I've been to a lot of them. Most are not paved or not completely paved. Yeah, I don't, the paving thing is kind of crazy too. And I don't think the one current operation would qualify because I don't know if there's enough pavement there. They probably have to bring in a couple 100 yards of pavement to make it work.
Well, our code does require a parking lot in that district to be paved. So, I mean, that's just kind of reiterating.
This is great code to come up with our own code. It can be a completely different thing. Like oh, have a food court with food trucks, doesn't have to be paved. You know, like, I don't know.
Yeah, which could happen. We would have to go back and amend our parking regulations because the parking rules, which are in the code right now, say it's got to be paved. So again, you're kind of working with existing codes as well. Just real quick on the Gibraltar thing. I don't know if we want to talk about that or not, but one of the issues there was they didn't look at things as congestion and parking. So we did look at that lawsuit and we wanted to make sure that we weren't making those same mistakes. And that's why we took a serious look at where to allow it and what issues we should be looking at. That's all I have. So.
The only other point that I would make before Denise continues with hers. I agree with everything that Julie said. And that, you know, there was significant time and thought put into this by staff and by the Plan Commission chair, undoubtedly.
You just got in the meeting?
Yeah.
What, you know, one of the things that I mentioned initially was we started going from a process where technically a food truck was not allowed. And then we skipped over, okay, how would we create code or an ordinance to allow a food truck? And we skipped over that and went up much higher to the food court idea. And then that idea got developed from there. Denise?
I was just going to say Nate had his hand up a couple of different times, but now he actually raised it. So I just wanted to hear what Nate had to say.
Nate?
So Chad, I think that one of the biggest challenges you've got is taking what you perceive as common sense and turning it into code. That is not easy. I know it seems that way from the outside, but there was a tremendous amount of thought there. I mean, maybe you don't agree with all of it behind it, but there was. And I don't think, maybe there was some lack of imagination on how this would actually apply, but I don't think that it'd be fair to say that there was a lack of thought in there. Maybe the application, been on the Plan Commission for a long time. It is a lot of thankless work. I also think that some of the issues you're seeing with this code aren't necessarily this code. It is more some other issues that we've got in the village. I have got some real strong feelings on the parking code. And one of the things that I did push back on this is I do think that we've got too high of parking requirements on this. I think we are mandating a lot of pavement to go in this village. And I think that we need to take a big look at that. But ultimately, I think there's a few issues with this code, but most of it is other things that tie into this code, this particular piece of code here.
I do retract saying not thought or time wasn't put into it. I understand. I mean, I read it 3 times and I can understand how painful the thought and time must have been put into it. The lack of creativity and just make it one big thing or that's it is just something I can't go along with.
Any further discussion? Trustees?
I'll just throw out there, I think we should revisit our parking code, but I've said that for a while.
I agree.
It just, to me, seems somewhat restrictive.
Are there any simple amendments that you think we could do that would make this?
I don't. I mean, not me. I mean,
Chad, it's easier to point out problems than it is to come up with solutions.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying amendments. You're talking. I know how amendments go when we start talking. It's really hard to keep track of. To me, it's not. Oh, those 2 things are a little. I don't think you can amend your way through this in 3 days. I mean, there's a lot in here. You guys put a lot of thought and time into it, but the size, the location, the pavement, the lack of the other places that get to have them. I mean, to me, there's just a lot of issues. I have a lot of issues with this code. Even the 20,000 square feet, 4,500, it's like you did the math to limit it to only 4. Why not just make it 4,000 each and put 5 in there? Like, why? I don't know why that thought was put there. It just seems weird.
Denise?
The 4,500 was because I think that's the smallest minimum lot size we currently have in the code, Chad. So we were kind of following some things that were currently in the code that already kind of made some sense. You bring up that's a fair point. Why not have 5? That could easily be amended. The one thing that I wanted to say to Scott's one comment is pretty restrictive. When you look at operating any other business in the village, there is a much longer list of restrictions on brick and mortar businesses than there are for mobile food trucks. So we tried to address just the key components of what was most important to be universal and across the board for anybody operating within the village, to be fair and just. And even though some of you may think it's still too restrictive, if you look at other businesses, there's less that they have to deal with than brick and mortar.
Thank you.
And Denise, I understand that. But when I'm looking at a food truck court, right? And I've been to them, Julie can comment on this since she's an expert. They are parked closer together. They are not spread out. They're pretty close. People share the same tables amongst each other. Just to do the basic math on this, right? Husby's is smaller than this lot size. Wild Tomato is less than half the size. If you think any food for food trucks are going to pump out more food than either of those places, it's trying to make them fit into what we are, and they're different. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be regulations and bathrooms and plenty of things available, but the idea that they can only be in one area and concentrated, and this lack of concentration. So for me to buy a lot, pave this lot, put a bathroom in this lot, for me to have a business model to charge food vendors to come in to utilize the space that I'm going to create to try to create a business, right? Because that's how you got to think about this. Somebody's got to create a business for this to work for any other food truck. So they got to wait for somebody to do this. And you're talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And how much can you charge them in rent? Not enough to the point where any of them would ever participate in your business. I just don't get the business model that would make this work. And if we're creating a code to try to allow things, but the math would never work on this business model. To me, that's just, whether you put a lot of time in or not, it's poor code. It's going to be almost impossible for people to apply the code and use it. And to me, that's just poor code. Whether I agree with what's happening or not, that just stifles. And this is just very stifling. This isn't moving in a direction to make it reasonable for somebody to participate in this activity.
Nate, did you have your hand up?
So something that Denise and Rob have heard many, many, many times, a plan commission does not think about money. They're not supposed to by the directive. So I hear what you're saying, and that's perfectly valid for us to think about and talk about at the board. And that's where public input is so vital. But, and Scott, I think Scott even heard me because I started back on this that long ago. Plan commission isn't looking at that. And that is absolutely a fair vantage point to look at it from, but it's not something that the plan commission does consider.
And Nate, I understand that, but as part of making something allowable in code, it's something that has to be considered. And I say it all the time. Our job so many times on this board isn't to make decisions to make somebody money or take it away from somebody, right? I agree with that philosophy, but if you create a new code and you want to try to encourage things or allow things, there's got to be, somebody's got to sit back and go, let's pretend what this business would look like. What would it take? What would it take to start from day one? Is this, so to me, it just seems like that roadmap is so hard to get to that this will never happen. And then if it can never happen, then the code's not effective. That's all.
To your point, Chad, and to the point that Nate made earlier about how this particular proposal could be amended, okay? All those complications you're referencing came about because we did not take a simple approach to say, okay, technically a food truck is not permissible. How would we go about drafting an ordinance or code to allow a business to have a food truck? We skipped over that and went immediately to this very detail-oriented court idea that included the philosophy that we needed a court for a tourist destination. So in my opinion, to Nate's question about how this could be amended or redrafted, it would be taking a crack at not skipping over step one. A truck is technically not allowed. How would we devise something to allow a truck? Starting at that point, rather than skipping over that and going to the food court idea. Denise?
I disagree with you, Rob. I don't believe we did skip over it. This does not preclude any business, any property owner in the B1 that currently has a business from having 1 and up to 4 food trucks on it. We didn't skip over that. This still allows that.
What about, how does it affect their parking? Or is it as if they're a day business and they're not operational? Like, I don't see any times, right? This would be great if there's a business that operated Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and then they created bathrooms available, and in the evenings they would allow it. I mean, was that in there and I missed it? Because otherwise you're talking these, you got to have 20,000 square feet dedicated to this on top of what your own parking requirements are going to be and your own space needed. And I mean, maybe the Pig is the only lot up there I could see, in Shopko, who knows? I guess I would like to see that list of places that you guys thought of, locations that could apply, and rattle them off. I'd like to hear them, because I'm sure they're there. I can't think of them.
Well, and the one other thing that I wanted to say, that we could make an amendment to this tonight, one small step, because I think you did bring up a valid point, Chad, that we could change it to 4,000 square feet and at least have 5 on a site. I think that's more than reasonable. Not that would make you vote for it, but I would be in favor of that. I think your point about them being food truck courts, if it's an actual court, being more dense per se, so I would be in favor of that if the board thought that was one small step that we could take tonight.
I think it's hard to vote for the whole thing just with those, I don't even want to call them concessions, just thinking this through. I still don't think it allows for other areas, and for, I mean, for a restaurant to not even be allowed to have one. I get you don't want more congestion downtown. I mean, I don't want to park a food truck in my parking lot, but you know what? Maybe at 9 o'clock at night when I'm done serving food, or one day when I can't even find enough cooks to serve food, and I'm going to want to still have food, and maybe I'd like a food truck or two to pull in my back parking lot because we're closing our kitchen, right? I mean, the world changes.
Okay, so let's ask Julie this. So let's just say, let's go ahead and just use Husby's as the example. Husby's is not open. The internal business is not open except for the bathrooms. They want to put a food truck in their parking lot. Could they do that under this code?
No.
I'd have to look at all the standards on it, but just to answer that part that Chad has talking about is that the parking requirements alone would not allow it. Not true, because what happens is if he wanted to do that, if he met the size standards and if he wanted to do that, it takes a conditional use permit. So the purpose of the conditional use permit is you look at those specific situations, and maybe, maybe Chad's open during the day and he needs X amount of parking for his business. And maybe he's closed at night or after 9. And you look at it individually and say whether or not it would work for him.
If we were out of business and kept our bathrooms
If it
open,
was in a different district. I'm sorry,
If-
Chad, go ahead.
yeah, if we were out of business and kept our bathrooms open, we are too small of a lot to do this. We're not in the right code district to do this. So the answer, Nate, is no, Husby's would not be allowed with our infrastructure to qualify for this.
As
which-
it's written right now, right?
Yeah, as it's written right now.
So it would take a reduction in lot size and an additional district.
Yeah, we're not in B1 and our lot size is too small.
If there's a way we could amend it so pre-existing businesses that are already. The problem is rewriting this right now is tricky. We need more thought.
Yeah, I think,
I would like to include B1 though. I mean, like that's a fair point. This aversion to density is, we've got other issues that we're covering up with this. That's not
And
really-
B2, if we want B2 to be business, then have it be business. I mean, I have the only vacant lot that I could CSM and build and do something with, and I can't build a house there anymore. I
We're
mean,
pushing people to get in the car and drive out there. We're
I
making
just-
the traffic and congestion worse.
yeah,
But at the same point, do we have to solve the other issues that come with that too? So it comes back to, this ultimately isn't the issue. There's other things that are compounding with this.
Okay.
You can't just solve one item.
I think you should send it back to Plan Commission because the Plan Commission needs to take a look at what happens when you allow random food trucks throughout a community over time. And if that's the look that we want in the Village of Sister Bay.
Yes.
Julie, we did have that conversation at Plan Commission, and that was a definitive no,
It was.
definitively.
well, let's roll call vote on this. Let's just do it that way. Because amendments aren't gonna be clarified nearly enough for, well, for me at least.
There's also,
Maybe for others.
there's other reasons to vote for this, even if it's imperfect, because all code is living. It's always changing.
No, it's not. We can vote no, they can work on it. That's where it's right now, it's December. Nobody's gonna be having this till May. I think that would be terrible of us. Well, in my opinion. You guys
So
are for it, I get it, right? But no, you don't vote for something and then cross your fingers hoping it's gonna change. I
think, I mean, I guess I look at this pragmatically thinking, I think that there's way too much stuff to unravel if you start changing anything substantial, but I do think Denise's amendment to 4,000 square feet is a step in the right direction that is reasonable at this time.
but I think if it's gonna be,
Food trucks in this village, so we get rid of some liability there, and then, I understand what you're saying, Chad, is there's a lot of code that we're gonna go revisit that it takes a long time to.
I think if you had a 20,000 square foot paved lot, which this is requiring, you could probably have 8 or 10 food trucks on there comfortably. And then it's a destination. I mean, I don't know, I would want to look at a map, and obviously every property is different, but I only brought that point up to say how ridiculous it was that it didn't even balance out. Like, where was the thought? 20,000, but you can have 4,500 per. So in essence, you only wanted 4. So you should have just said 5,000 square feet, because you guys did the math. It's not that hard. it just make no sense to me that number, those, and I get you were pulling from old code or that it relates to something else, but this isn't old code or relating to anybody else, anything else. This is new. This is different. And it's okay
Well,
to
this
think
is
things.
existing code. I mean, there's so many things that tie into existing code. It's nothing is in this village for zoning is on its own. There's all the parking code and
Do we,
ties
do we have does somebody have a motion they would like to offer?
To get the ball rolling, I'll just make a motion to approve as presented and amended to allow 5 food trucks per 20,000 square foot lot.
I would second that if it was 4,000 for every 4,000 square feet, which is effectively the same thing you're saying, Denise. That
Okay.
wording makes me
Just
more.
different wording, that's
Yeah.
fine, sure.
I'll second.
So you're seconding that that 1 food truck on a 4,000 square foot lot, Nate?
Yeah, it would change, sub D to 4,000 instead of 4,500.
That's not what he means though, Rob. I think how you said it, Rob, is 1 for 4,000. That would say you could allow 1 food truck in an area, which I would be all for. But I don't think that's what Denise's motion is. I get it, it's 4,000, so it makes it a round number. So if you have 2,400 square feet, you can now have 6. But I don't think that's the way you phrase it, Rob, isn't what Nate meant.
I'm saying in sub D, to avoid overcrowding, the maximum density food court shall not exceed 1 vendor per 4,000 square feet of lot area.
Okay.
Is that what you meant, Denise?
Yes. Still needing the 20,000 square foot lot, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the part I was trying to clarify.
Yeah.
For you guys. I think we should do a roll call on this.
Okay, do you want me to take a roll call, Rob?
Sure,
Would you like to start?
sure.
Zaki?
I'm opposed.
Lyons,
Opposed.
Baker,
Opposed?
Bell,
Yes.
Berto,
yes.
and Kadako.
No.
So that's 2 yeses and 4 nos.
Okay,
Denise has her hand up, Rob.
yes, Denise.
So I don't, this is gonna come out worded wrong, but I don't want to waste Plan Commission's time on going over this again. So for those of you who were against it, I want you to send Julie, who will forward to the Plan Commission, a list of things that you want to see changed, so that we are closer with, as we work through this again, that we are closer to the board than being happy with it and approving it. Because I don't want to go into this conversation, come back again, and you say, no, we still don't like it. I don't want to do that.
I think that's
So
great. I think that's.
I need to hear from the 3 of you.
4.
4.
Yeah, I think that's great.
And you want us to send those to Julie, Denise, right?
Yes, please. And she
When
will
is it?
forward them then to Plan Commission.
What is this going to be? Do you need this before your next plan meeting, Denise?
Yeah, by the end of the week,
No,
right?
no,
Yeah.
no.
And my week's already taken.
Yeah,
it's-
Everybody's week is taken and so is next week. I would suggest, and Julie raised her hand. I don't know what she was going to say, but I don't know what Plan Commission looks like for January. If it's really long, maybe it'll be pushed off to February. I don't know what's coming down the pike, but I would say if you could get it to us the first week of January after New Year's, that will be plenty of time. It would be in our packet. We would be able to review it.
Okay.
Okay,
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say that, I was just gonna say the deadline for the next one is January 5th. So that would give us time to get those comments into the agenda. We have moved on, kind of so to speak, in at planning to start looking at cluster subdivisions and things to move the Wiltie property forward. So this is, you know, kind of slows that whole process down. But yeah, the last time it went to the board meeting, the only concern that the board had was that it didn't talk about formula business. So we went back to plan commission. So I think everybody thought we had we had what everybody wanted this time. So have it to me on the 5th. Plan commission can discuss it in January and bring it back in February.
And then Julie, that would, what is listed as 8B, ordinance number 297 regarding the mobile food vendor licenses should move along with that then, correct?
Right, that should just be tabled until we get to the,
And,
right,
and move that along, back with, 296.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so that will move us now to item 8C, ordinance number 305, an amendment to chapter 38, Parks and Recreation, park hours of operation and quiet hours. As discussed at the last board meeting, the ordinance would result in Waterfront Park being open 24 hours, but quiet hours being imposed between 10 PM to 7 AM. Any discussion? I will motion that we approve ordinance number 305 as presented this evening.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 8D, ordinance number 306, an amendment to chapter 18 on business regulation regarding direct sellers. This ordinance cleans up antiquated language related to all such vendors having to be from the village. Correct, Julie?
yes,
Any discussion? I'll motion that we approve ordinance number 306 as presented.
second,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Moving along to item 8E, ordinance number 311, amending chapters 1, 30, and 38 regarding general provisions, nuisances, parks and recreation, noise nuisances, and decibel levels. Currently, noise is not considered a nuisance, but it is referenced in detail in the nuisance code. This ordinance would establish additional noise rules and limit noise levels in the village and in Waterfront Park. Do we have any discussion on this? I will motion that we approve ordinance 311 as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 8F, ordinance number 312, amendment to chapter 58 regarding traffic and vehicles, abandoned vehicles, and parking on streets and parking lots. This ordinance would limit vehicles from consuming 2 or more parking stalls, regulate parking in lots, and except under certain circumstances as noted, prohibit overnight parking on village streets. Any discussion? I will motion that we approve ordinance number 312 as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I'll ask my fellow trustees if anyone has an objection to handling all of the resolutions noted in agenda item 9 via one motion.
Well, seeing I'm not on that page, I don't know what they all include.
Okay, it's resolution number 505, the 2-lot CSM for Lundquist Properties, reconfiguring 2 lots as approved by the Plan Commission. It's resolution number 506, with some budget amendments that Tasha had to put forward. It's resolution number 507, authorizing the partial redemption of the village's taxable general obligation promissory notes dated February 9th, 2021. And it's resolution number 508, adopting our new fee schedule that we've discussed previously. Tasha has her hand up.
I would ask that you do resolution 507 separately because it's very specific with the bond council. They're
Okay.
gonna want to see that.
Let's just, to move things along, we'll just go item by item then and not devote any more time to how we could split them up. Resolution number 505 relates to the 2-lot CSM as noted, Lundquist Properties LLC on Highway 42. There's a reconfiguration of 2 lots. It was approved by the Plan Commission to be forwarded to the board for approval.
Nate, does this addressed what you brought up last time, correct? That line has now been drawn around that guy
Yes.
wire?
Yep.
Okay,
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Resolution number 506, amending the 2022 budget. Tasha's full report in the packet started on page 74. Tasha, was there anything that you in particular wanted to point out on this?
No, a lot of these are really just cleanups, net positive on the general fund. Otherwise, it was changes in, really odd things that came up throughout the year that we had to react to as we went. So nothing too significant. Excuse
so
me.
moved.
Second.
Motion by Berto, second by Kadanko. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Resolution number 507, authorizing the partial redemption of the village's taxable general obligation promissory notes dated February 9th, 2021. Staff report is on page 82 of the packet. And this is what Tasha had mentioned that wanted separate attention in particular. Tasha, is there something you'd like to note?
I have
from your-
nothing to add to what's in my report.
Okay.
Pretty standard.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
All
Second.
second Scott's motion.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Resolution number 508, adopting the new village fee schedule. The staff report begins on page 86 in the packet. Do we have any discussion?
Yes.
Denise?
So Julie, last time when we saw this, and I think in your board report, it had stated that it still wasn't covering all costs and we sent it back to you. But I didn't compare the old with this side by side and nothing was highlighted. So did you up things?
Yes, I did. If you scroll through it, there should be you can see what was changed in there. What we did was we went through to try and make sure that the fee was covering the cost of service on all of the applications. So we
Okay.
did do that after the Plan Commission meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 10, discussion and action items. 10A, the development agreement for 1211 Properties LLC. Staff report appears on page 107 with supporting detail in your packet. Julie, I'm going to turn this one over to you.
Sure. So this is one where you have received a letter from the applicant's attorney opposing this development agreement, asking it goes back to Plan Commission. in a nutshell, what happened is the applicant applied for some uses about 2 years ago. We've spent 2 years going through processing this. We found out that they never had a development agreement, which was an error on our part. They agreed to have a development agreement. We put that development agreement out there. And then they said, oh, wait a minute, we want to have music, outdoor music. We said, no, if you want that, you come back. We just spent 2 years processing what you applied for. So if you want that, come back and apply for that separately. The other thing is he had wanted to use the Historic Society's property for parking, which the code does not allow, but we were willing to work with him until we got to the point where we're like, wait a minute, how is he even going to market? How are we going to know people know where it's parking? Let's just stop it and stick with what the code says and make him put that parking on his own lot. So they said no to the offsite parking. And that is what's in front of you, is the development agreement that reflects the land uses that were applied for and requiring him to have his own parking on his own property. They disagree with that, and that's why you have the objection in the packet from them.
Bjorn?
Rob, if I could just make a few comments in addition to my letter. So over the weekend, I was kind of thinking about this after I sent the letter to everybody here asking for a remand. And if that is not really within the purview of everybody's minds here tonight, I would ask for another consideration for everybody that I think would significantly move us towards a final agreement that I think both sides can kind of come to the table on. And, you know, listening to this discussion on the food court stuff, it's kind of telling. So I would like to propose a few specific line item amendments that I think the board could adopt tonight that I think we could, you know, push us towards an agreement. And it relates to both the parking and the music. So with the parking, I would turn your attention to pages 109 and page 112 of the packet. And for page 109, I'm looking at section 1 sub B. And for page 112, I'm looking at section 6 sub D sub 1 sub B. And instead of just kind of categorically saying no to overflow parking on the Historic Society's lot, I would propose that the village board just makes a simple line item amendment saying all offsite parking must be approved by the Plan Commission. So that way, this particular issue, you know, if we need to have future discussions about this and negotiations with planning on this, then my clients, you know, will have that opportunity in the future, and it gives some power and some leverage to the Plan Commission that it would, you know, have otherwise, even if you were to remand it. So, you know, we've received a letter from John Nelson of the Historical Society in the last several days saying, you know, in writing they're allowing this, or they would, you know, consent to us using parking on their adjacent lot. So I think, you know, if you decide not to remand the whole thing back to planning, which they're first asked, but, you know, secondly, I think something like just that simple line item amendment could make sense here, just to give the Plan Commission more room for negotiations with us moving forward. So that's parking. Secondly, on music, I would turn your attention to page 115 of your packet. And that's section 15 subs 1 through 4. So regarding the outdoor music. So obviously this kind of has to be read in context with the conditional use process you guys just approved for outdoor entertainment facilities. So again, if you're thinking, okay, we're not going to remand this back to planning, we want to approve this tonight, we would ask for this simple line item amendment saying strike 1 through 4 and say any outdoor music that has not achieved a legal non-conforming status shall only be allowed pursuant to a conditional use permit as an outdoor entertainment facility. So that way, all of my clients' past operations can be legally grandfathered outdoors, and any new significant operations outdoors for music that are beyond the scope of what they have already been operating as can be the first type of conditional use permit that you can review as part of this outdoor entertainment facility stuff. So I think just making those two simple changes would be really helpful here. Again, I think the decibel stuff is I've voiced this before in the past to some committees, that having varying decibel restrictions on each of these properties throughout the village is a bad idea. I would, also say strike the provision under section 15 sub 2, where it just says simply, restricted to 75 decibels. Everybody is operated under 85 forever. That's what my clients have reasonably relied on when making their business decisions. So I think just to pull a fast one and say 75 in this development agreement is really unfair. So, I think making those two strikes tonight would be helpful. I think it'll move things more towards agreement. I'm not, conceding whether or not this would be the final agreement, but I think just either remanding it back to planning, because I do think it needs a lot more work since I've been put on this. And if you're not open to that, then just consider making these two amendments here. And, I have had a chance to review the file too a little bit. And, Julie and I'm sure we'll have discussions on this moving forward. But based off of my look at the record, my clients have proposed outdoor music since as early as September of 2020 in some of their packet proposals to the village. So I think this notion that the village was never on notice about outdoor music at this property, it's just false, unfortunately. There were proposals as early as September 2020 that there would be outdoor music here. And quite honestly, I think this really just feels more like the village trying to leverage my clients into the conditional use process for an outdoor entertainment facility, which is fine for new operations that wouldn't be legally grandfathered. But we can't just try to throw everything my clients have been doing for the past 2 years under the rug back into this process of having these weird restrictions on them. That's going to significantly affect their business. So again, we asked for a remand. That was my letter to you. If you're saying, okay, we don't want to remand this, we want to get this approved tonight, then we just ask for those two simple amendments. And I think that's all I really wanted to address right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Bjorn. Denise?
These are not simple amendments. The board has not been involved for the last 2 years with this business, with all of the changes, with all of the violations. The zoning code is not negotiable. If you have a problem and you can't get a permit, then you go to Board of Appeals and you make your case in front of them. But for the board to negotiate something that the Plan Commission has worked on for over 2 years without all the background knowledge, and I disagree with Bjorn, for the documentation that I have looked at, the Hoop building was supposed to be an extension of the restaurant and for private use. In the documentation I have looked at, we did not permit them to have outdoor music at that time. So I would be really disheartened if the board would overrule 2 years of work. If you don't want to approve it, that's one thing, and send it back to Plan Commission. But the zoning code is not a negotiable document. It is what it is today. tomorrow, it could be different. Next month, it could be different, as it's a living, breathing document that we update and change as we have time. But I ask that you do not do that. That's my 2 cents.
Julie, and then Bjorn.
Yeah, just to clarify something, if I heard correctly, Bjorn was mentioning that it would be a legal grandfathered use. So we should take that section out of the development agreement.
I just want to see what they decide on this.
That is not true, because it's not, in order to be a legally non-conforming use, you have to be legal to be that. And it's not. We've got parking violations out there right now. We've got screening violations out there right now. The property is not in compliance, so there is no reason why we would grandfather it as a legal non-conforming use.
Yes, Bjorn.
Yeah, I think the question of whether or not this is a legal grandfathering use is going to be an issue moving into the future, regardless of whether or not this development agreement goes into place. You know, I would just represent at this point to Denise's comments. You know, my client's issues with the development agreement isn't necessarily it's not negotiating the zoning code. I mean, I think the issue are provisions that are contrary or otherwise more restrictive than the zoning code. So it feels like sometimes with these development agreements, they're designed in a way to have different rules applicable to certain properties that are not otherwise generally applicable under the zoning code. So, I mean, I think my clients, you know, anybody would represent, yeah, we're in compliance with all zoning. But this question of whether or not, especially the 75 decibel nonsense, you know, that's a different rule that is not in the zoning code. So, I mean, to try to skirt this in here through a development agreement, I think it's really backdoor legislating. So, I mean, regarding the outdoor music stuff, I mean, I know our client's position moving forward is going to be, you know, it was an inherent part of the outdoor approvals they've had throughout the past 2 years. So, I mean, now that you've passed this outdoor entertainment facility, you know, conditional use process, now, yeah, new outdoor facilities are going to have to go get these conditional use permits. So to try to put the, you know, after the fact burners on these guys, it's just not, it's not reasonable here. So, I mean, if you think, you know, this is going to need more work, again, we would ask that it's sent back to planning. I think it needs more work before we can really reach an agreement, but we'll see. So,
Julie?
Yeah, as staff who's been on, you know, I've only been with the Plan Commission 6 months. I don't think it needs more work. You know, it is what it is. If you, the 75 decibels that's in that code or in that development agreement is because that's what's in the code. That's what's in there. If you want to come back and have a outdoor entertainment facility with a greater decibel, allow more noise, you come back and you apply for it. That's just the way it is. I mean, it's not uncommon to issue a development agreement on a property. And then if they want to do something else, they come back and they apply and they get a new development agreement. That's the process. So this does not allow the outdoor entertainment because that was never on the application. But if he wants to do that, he comes back and he applies for it and we go through a new development agreement. That's what we do. That's what we've done on other properties. That's the fair process. Parking, Denise said it, you know, the code doesn't allow it. There was a lot of time spent on that. put the parking on site yourself or come up with something else for us to consider. But, or if somebody didn't like the land use decision that was made with that, that could have been appealed, you know? Whenever there's a land use decision that cannot be appealed, and you miss your appeal right, that doesn't mean you come back and you try and kill the development agreement. I mean, this says, hey, we're gonna authorize what's out there right now. If you want to come back later for your outdoor entertainment, please do file the application, come back, let's go through this again. But to just kill it and send it back when there's no reason to is just wasting the plan commission's time. And like I said, they've spent 2 years on it. There's been a lot of time. This was not something that they took lightly at all.
Trustees, do we have any more discussion? I will motion that we approve the development agreement for 1211 Properties LLC as presented this evening.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 I,
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion item 10B, accepting the urban forestry grant. As we see on page 127 of the packet, we have a formality before us this evening of officially accepting the urban forestry grant that our village administrator and director of public works has secured for us. Any discussion? I'll motion that we officially accept the urban forestry grant as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion item 7C, or excuse me, 10C. Amending the board and committee bylaws adopted November 15th, 2022. Page 136, staff report in the packet. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, I'll motion that we amend the board and committee bylaws as presented. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 10D, the professional services agreement regarding building plan reviews. Staff report on page 155 in the packet. Do we have any discussion? This is essentially so we have a services agreement in place for companies that want to conduct building plan reviews. I will motion that we accept the professional services agreement as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item 10E, regarding request for proposals for planning services. We have a draft of an RFP in our packet. Where before us is to accept the draft as presented. Do we have any discussion?
Rob, I just have a comment.
Yes, Julie.
Just a comment. I wrote the timeline so that everything went back to the board. Because we're pretty hands-on sometimes. It really drags the process out. I wish that we could just assign like 1 or 2 trustees to review things and just go back to the board with that final contract. It could speed things up quite a bit, because if we do this on every RFP, we're never going to get anything done. You know, this is to do the planning services, then you do designs, you do RFPs on buildings, you do RFPs on engineering. We're never going to make the progress. So if we could speed the timeline up a little bit by having some trustees actually review RFPs and et cetera, and only go back to the board when we have that final contract, I think it would speed things up quite a bit. So I would like to see you approve it, just assigning some trustees though, so we can change the timeline on it.
Denise,
Just the contract? Do you want a couple of people to review?
So
That'd
yeah, when you look at the timeline, you know, you get the initial ones back and then you review them. You decide which ones you should perhaps bring in for an interview. The way it's written is the board would decide you're bringing back for an interview, and then the board would decide who they're gonna offer contracts to. Many times you just have a small group who's making those recommendations to the board. You know, they're going through those interviews, et cetera, and they're saying, we've reviewed this, this is the best person, this is the best bid. We are presenting this contract to you. And then really the only action is the board would take that final one on approving who the contract is given to. So it's not a lot of work. It's just that when you spread it out where you can only do one thing a month, it just really stretches it out.
Chad,
I don't disagree with that. Sometimes it may concern who's making those decisions, but aren't the committees kind of doing this already? Like, I mean, we've like, when it comes to Marina, when it comes to parks, at least my experience is they're coming to us and we're approving them and then the board signs off. So we're kind of like those 1 or 2 board members that are reviewing it. And generally the timing of those meetings comes before the board meeting. But I think that I interrupt Denise or Rob or Nate, or, you know, that's kind of how we do it? Or am I missing something? Is this different?
what I recall is kind of a haberdashery of one committee might handle it one way, or Nicole handled it one way, Zeke handled it one way. I think, you know, I agree with the formality of a singular process. I'm not, I guess my question to you, Julie, would be, what kind of sense of assurity do you have that time is going to be saved if there was a pre-screening committee of several trustees rather than just when it comes up for a monthly board meeting, presenting it to the full board?
Well, I would hope that if we had trustees assigned to it, they'd be willing to look at it 2 times a month, 3 times a month, versus waiting and just doing it one little step at a time every single month.
I would offer to my fellow trustees regarding Julie's point, if you would be comfortable testing a process whereby we turn that process over to the administrative committee, which is essentially Julie and I, and that the board, the full board would get a report during committee reports at each board meeting as to status on those reviews. And if I would say to try, my suggestion would be we try it that way and get to the first following board meeting where we would have an update via the administrative committee. And if the board is comfortable and Julie is comfortable with that process, I would commit to it. If somebody has a different idea, Chad had his hand up first and then Denise.
I don't think any one trustee ever should be doing that, personally. And even too, I get it. I guess I'm just, what's the difference what we're doing now? I know each committee maybe does it differently, but in the committees I'm a part of, the committee puts the work out either via somebody in parks or, you know, or like Dan Clancy or Dave Lee now's going out there. We look at it, we approve it, and then the board ultimately approves it. There's usually a couple of trustees involved in that process. That process has seemed to work since I've been here. Am I missing something? I feel like we're talking about something different and I'm off here. So if I am, just please tell me.
Sure. The way that it's been going is you've been approving different types of stuff. So there's different bidding and processes depending on what you're doing in government. What you've been doing is everybody decides, hey, we're gonna we're gonna rebuild a road. And you've just been leaving it to Dan Klansky to put it out for bids. He gets the bids, he reviews the bids, he brings it back at the end and says, do you agree with the lowest bidder? This is who we want to hire. So he has left you out of that entire middle process because his projects allow you to do that. I'm not sure if you've ever done design RFPs or construction RFPs where you're required, you know, we have to give a, it's a longer process, and usually staff does that. But we haven't done them before as a board. So I guess the question is, do we want the board to review every step of the way? If you're comparing it to the construction work that you've done through Public Works, you would say, no, Julie, just do it and come back with a final contract. Or, you know, bring it to the Parks Committee or Planning Committee when you have someone in mind. You know, if there's two people that you feel are best qualified, bring it to them and let them whittle it down and then bring it to the board for a final contract.
So I in my head, I guess what I think I'm hearing the difference is there's not a lot of policy decisions to be made when you're building a road. Along this way, there's going to be a lot of policy input that we might not be putting staff in the best place if we have them make some of those decisions, because we've been a little bit erratic sometimes, which is fine. You know, we change our minds, we get more information. That is a perfectly healthy thing to do. But I think that's what I'm hearing you say, Julie.
Well, for example, let me tell you the timeline I'm looking at, okay? The way it's written is on page 172. So, you know, we put the proposal out, we give them, you have to give them a date where they can ask final questions. So that's in there. And then the addendum issued. So it's, everything is based on a board meeting. So, notice of finalists of interviews scheduled if applicable. It'd be nice to say, hey, these are all pretty clear cut. Let's just schedule the interviews on this day and let's have a representative from planning and parks there. Instead, the way it's written is the board, it goes to the board first to decide, should we do interviews? And then if there are interviews, you wait a month to do those interviews because it's the board that does those interviews. And then are you going to award a contract to somebody? You wait another month because it's the board that awards that contract. And then, okay, let's review the first draft. Okay, well now we're into July, and then we have to have a final one that's in front of the board at the end of July. Reviewing the drafts, approving what the product, absolutely a board decision. Awarding the contract, absolutely. But bringing every little thing, waiting a month to make a decision on every little thing takes you 7 months.
Yeah, that helps explain it.
I personally think you should have somebody from the 3 committees. I think it should be from the 3 committees involved here, which is land acquisition, but that one ends in January. It should be parks and it should be planning. Those are the 3 committees that are critical on this project. And it would be nice.
I would be in favor with that setup, that group of people to speed things along and not have it always be on, you know, another agenda item on 350-page packets.
Yep.
So could that be a monthly special meeting of the members of,
Got to be more fluid than that.
call a committee, or do we create a new committee to say,
Well, don't we run into quorum issues? I mean, like, I think Rob's point, like, we might need to have it so we don't have, otherwise we'd have a negative quorum if we had 3 trustees get together.
No, Chad's got it. Chad nailed it. I want to be able to call up my chairs or whoever was assigned and say, hey, can we get together, as long as I don't have a quorum there, and because that one committee is disbanding in January, I'm really only dealing with 2 trustees and saying, hey, can we get together and look this over? What do you think? This is what I'm thinking. And then when we have that final product that needs board approval, we just come back at that point.
So what would halt us from having a process where when it's necessary, you contact those individuals and just say, hey, we need to meet in my office
That's exactly right. That's
No.
that's what I'm
no
asking.
later than 4 days from now? When can you be there? When can the other person be there? And
That's what she's asking for.
okay. So can we have general consensus on that, or do you want to rewrite this for presentation, Julie, so that it verbalizes that?
What I would like you to do is approve this moving forward, subject to the timeline being adjusted to be, to allow for more fluidity, I guess, would be the way to answer it.
Okay.
Okay.
Heidi, do we need Julie to spell that motion out one more time?
No, I have it.
Okay, so I will make that motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Now we come to the point in the evening when everyone needs to get their box of Kleenex out. I am sorry to have to go through item number 10F. Unfortunately, we have to accept a trustee resignation this evening as Mary Lyons is moving and relocating to be living outside of the village. Mary, let me be the first to say thank you very much for your service. I would share with my fellow trustees, as I mentioned to Mary offline earlier, about a week ago or so, I've been thoroughly pleased to be getting extremely positive reports from various committee members on committees that Mary serves on recently as to how pleased they've been with the way Mary had been developing and growing into and really embracing her role, particularly with the library committee. We're very thankful for that. I told Mary how pleased I was to have heard that. As I mentioned to Mary at the time, we would, be continually watching with Julie's vision as well to any openings that might happen on committees where somebody from a citizen or somebody residing in Liberty Grove would qualify, that we would certainly be interested in having Mary stay involved that way, as she expressed she would be interested. So thank you again, Mary, and I turn the floor over to you, and it's yours to express whatever you would like to.
No, I think you said it perfectly, Rob. Thank you so much for putting your trust in me. And I am having a very hard time giving up this position. But, I was glad to serve as long as I did. And I hope that I can serve on committees in the future. So thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Mary.
you.
Thank you, Mary. So I will motion that we accept Mary Lyons' resignation as trustee.
I'd like to make a comment real quick. There's a right of way that Liberty Grove owns, and then where she will be purchasing is right there. So we could figure out a way to maybe annex this property. So going forward, you never know, Mary, maybe we could get creative. Once Liberty Grove owes us one, we could ask for that. But thank you. Appreciate it, Mary.
Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's carried. And then a reminder to my fellow trustees, if you have any candidates in mind to ultimately be moved forward to the board for appointment to serve out the last month of Mary's term. Please forward those candidate suggestions to Julie. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's
Item-
actually, it's more than a month, Rob. I think you said to complete a month of her term.
No, I said the months, plural,
Oh, I'm sorry. All right.
Yeah. the months remaining.
So Mary was just elected this April?
Yeah, so it's a year and 3 months,
Yeah.
4 months.
April of 24.
So if we have people who may be interested and send their resumes, would this be discussed in closed session if we have multiples or even just one? Julie?
No, it would be treated the same as we do with the committee appointments, where we're gonna have to present that information to the board. Rob is gonna have to make a recommendation and the board's gonna have to vote on it.
So whether it's somebody in the community who would happen to mention to a trustee they'd like to send a resume in, or whether it's a suggestion coming directly from a trustee as to a candidate a particular trustee is suggesting, in either case, that information should get to Julie. Preferably by email. Okay, item number 10G, a review of the financial statements and an approval of the monthly bills. Tasha's monthly report begins on page 180 of the packet. Do we have any discussion or questions for Tasha on the monthly bills? Hearing none, I'll motion that we approve payment of the monthly bills as noted.
Second,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 11A, committee appointments. The 11A, the Village Hall Planning Task Force, meeting 2 trustees, 3 residents, and 2 citizens, effective January 2nd, 2023. As previously clarified, Don Cox and I are willing to serve on the committee. We held off on forwarding any individual candidates, in part based on the request Denise made that had majority agreement that presenting candidates in total for positions that were open. You have seen in your packet the resumes and cover letters forwarded to us from the various candidates interested. Based on needing 3 residents and 2 citizens, and based on my review of all of the information forwarded, my recommendation would be that the 3 resident candidates for the Village Hall Committee be Nancy Ackerley, Roberta Kutlick, and Aretha Sills, and that the 2 citizen candidates be Doug Hansen and Kathleen Van Gemmer.
Okay, so who?
If I'm
I disagree with that.
okay. In what form and shape?
So who is not, so.
David Schmitz has recused himself. He has said he's no longer willing, that because there's sufficient candidates to fill the slots, he does not want to commit to it. He was willing to serve if we needed somebody,
Okay,
didn't have candidates. So essentially, out of the resident candidates, that leaves Nancy Ackerley, Don Howard, Roberta Kutlick, and Aretha Sills.
okay. I would like to see Don Howard instead of Roberta Kutlick, is my opinion.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
After years of serving with Don on Plan Commission.
Yep, he
Very
is an
capable.
outside of the box kind of thinker.
Yes.
He's brilliant.
Is Don capable of participating in Zoom meetings?
that's for you to find out.
Well, that's part of why I'm not recommending him. My understanding from Julie is that he's not capable of participating in Zoom meetings.
Yeah, I don't know if he's capable or not. I just know the application came in on paper and there's no email address associated with. I question the capability to receive the meeting packets and then participate electronically.
Okay, well, I think we should clarify that then before we choose somebody else and rule him out.
He had digital packets when he was on plan commission, back when we were using those awful tablets.
Yeah, he
Okay, so
did.
do we, it sounds like we have consensus then that there's, or I should say, it sounds like we have multiple voices in support of Denise's point that she would like to see the 3 resident candidates be Nancy Ackerley, Don Howard, and Aretha Sills. Is that correct? Do we have any
Yes.
disagreement from trustees on those 3 as the resident candidates? Okay, do we have any disagreement from the trustees on Doug Hanson and Kathleen Van Gemmert being the citizen candidates?
So who are the citizen candidates that you're not choosing? I'm trying to,
Carl Madsen and Elizabeth Moriarty.
I do not think I know the Hansons or Van Gimmert.
Okay, Doug Hanson has extensive.
I read his
experience.
bio.
All right, well, in case somebody else didn't, Doug Hanson has extensive experience in elevator engineering and experience with Otis Elevators. As everyone, I believe, is aware, we have a significant challenge related to whether or not we would be replacing the elevator, putting a new one in, filling it in with cement. In my opinion, that would be valuable experience to have from someone serving as a citizen on the committee, in addition to the other points of interest on his resume.
Okay, can you do the motions separately for the residents and non-residents, please?
Okay, so I will motion that we approve Nancy Ackerley, Don Howard, and Aretha Sills as the 3 residents on the
Second.
village hall committee. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Denise, do you have any further discussion points you want to make on the citizen candidates?
No, thank you.
Okay, I will motion that we approve Doug Hanson and Kathleen Van Gemmert as the citizens.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 11B, the Marina Committee. As noted previously, we are returning with the official rewrite of the bylaws so that in addition to Villius and Pat Duffy serving as the resident members, that the current members, Greg Sundstrom and Dwight Anderson, would remain as alternate members.
Correct.
So I will motion that we approve as presented.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 11C, Parks, Property and Streets Committee. We're in need of 2 residents, one to complete a term through April of 2023. We have 1 candidate at this time, Mickey Mastardi. I'm recommending to the board that we appoint her to finish the term that ends April 2023. This will, for those of you who don't know Mickey or have not had her in your presence at a committee meeting as a citizen attending a meeting, this would give the Parks, Property and Streets Committee members an opportunity to get to know Mickey and the type of work and commitment and experience she could offer the committee for the next 4 months. I can tell you that I have been with Mickey when she's attended Green Tier meetings, been very attentive, very enthused and interested, and has been looking to serve for some time on a committee. And my recommendation is we appoint her to complete the term on the committee, Sharon's term that ends April of 2023. Any discussion?
Second.
All right, I'll have that motion with a second by Chad. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item 11D, the Ad hoc Outdoor Recreation and Transportation Plan Committee. As we noted last month, based on the fact that we had never officially created this committee, we need to do so as noted officially. Julie, are there any of the particulars of that that I've left out that need to be mentioned?
Yeah, it's we just never officially appointed the people. Now with Mary gone, we're looking at 2 trustees and 2 citizen candidates. So we still need more members. But at least this gives us enough to continue meeting.
Okay, so I'll motion that we approve as presented.
There's nothing in the packet.
So I did not get the, I did not get,
If you have the agenda in front of you, it's noted that it's confirming Nate Bell as the trustee chair, Chad as the other trustee member, Brian Fitzgerald and Bill Anderson as citizens.
so just an explanation why there's no bio or resume is I treated them just like I did Greg Sundstrom and Dwight Anderson, in that they've been meeting for at least a year. Greg and Dwight have been meeting for years. They were well known, so I didn't bother getting a bio from them because they were just part of the system already.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Staff reports. Julie?
So just real quick, Dan is sick today, so he's pretty out of the weather, so he's not gonna be able to give us a report. I'm just pulling mine up real quick here. I saw Dave was on. I'm not sure if he still is, so Dave could give a report about the marina too. Just as far as mine goes real quick, it's just about the Wiltsey that the joint group decided to take a different approach to the Wiltsey property than we have in the past, and look at for now kind of the whole property as residential, and work on getting some engineering done out there. There was a grant I found where we could try and get the engineering paid for. So I did submit a letter of interest to see if we'd be accepted to apply for that grant. That would help us with the engineering out there, but that was a big step for the group. They like the idea of cluster subdivisions and different housing choices out there. So I'm working on some code amendments to bring to the Plan Commission in January that could help us facilitate that and keep that whole process moving forward. Broadband, we're still not done getting the results on the speed test. When we do, I'll be drafting a request for information, which I'll send out to providers that will then come back to the Parks Committee to say, what do you think? Should we be working with one of these to actually see about getting fiber optic or broadband throughout the village? Grants, still have not submitted on the waterfront grant. That one is due real soon here. That's due in January 15th. Don't know if it's going to happen because you need partners on that. We really don't have partners where other groups are paying for part of it. but we're still gonna submit it and hope that we get approved. Last thing is just annual reports. Looking what we've done in the past, I saw that we didn't have annual reports from the departments. So I've asked each department to do an annual report that we'll be bringing back to you in January. It just summarizes the highlights of 2022 and kind of compares it to years past, so we can get a pulse on how we're doing as a village with finances, road repairs, dock rentals, etc. So that'll be next month. And that's all I have.
Just so everyone
Just so
knows,
everyone knows, I'm switching to phone for the rest of the meeting.
Okay,
Julie, I have a question. So I made that contact with Eric Dorshing from Tracy Cross
Yeah,
down in Palatine, Illinois. Very excited to talk to us. Definitely thinks that he can help us. So now, can I give you his phone number and request that you talk to him? And this is an agenda item for next month to either have him come and Zoom into our meeting and see if the board wants to enter into a contract with him, which is very different than the RFPs that you are looking for. They are going to do a housing analysis. So how do you see that moving forward?
okay. The only time we can contract for services or this type of service without going through that RFP process is if it was with an government agency. So like when we contract with Bay Lake, we don't have to do an RFP on that because they are considered another unit of government. It's government to government. In order to hire Tracy, we would have to do an RFP and they'd have to be the best responder. So if the board decided that they wanted to do a housing analysis, we'd have to do the RFP and they'd have to respond to it. I did look them up though when you sent me the information. It's very informative.
Yes.
And what I was going to do is I was actually going to see where we go in the process, because I think at some point we should be sending them an RFP to see, maybe that's the design of the actual Wiltsey property or part of it. I don't know. I think
No, that's not what they do. That's
yeah,
not what they do. They would meet, from my conversation with Eric, is we tell them what we want to do. They do 80% of their work outside of Illinois. They're all across the country. They do small developments. They do hundreds of acres of developments and everything in between. And even though we talk about and had some really great conversation about what we'd like to see and thinking outside of the box on all this different kind of housing, they take that all into consideration and they recommend to us exactly what we should be doing based on all the research and information that they have and what's trending, what's working, what's not working. It's very different. It's not about site plan. It's about telling us exactly what we should be building and what kinds of housing that it should be. So I just, as much as I'm happy that we're sending out these other RFPs on all the village buildings and where they should go, because I just believe that is not the board's expertise. We can all have our own opinions. I also feel that way about the housing. So does that have to then be a board agenda and discussion next month on whether or not the board would authorize RFPs for that type of analysis to be done?
technically what we should do is get the three groups together again and say, hey, you made a motion and you agreed this is what we're going to do with the Wiltsey property. There's this company out here who can do this Do we want to revise what we decided? Do we want to scrap what we decided and instead go this route?
No, I think you do both. They're
Yeah.
two totally separate things.
I
Okay, but-
actually think I alluded to something like you're talking about, Denise, is where let's not decide how we want to, when we're talking about the makeup of the zoning on there, so let's figure out what the optimal layout is, and let's not say that we want this R1 or this R2 or whatever. Let's have somebody else help us figure out what it is. So that is something this particular item we did discuss. We just didn't say we wanted a consultant for it, but I think that's a great idea.
So however you want to do it, but we'll have to do it on-
Whatever you have to do legally or whatever, I'll let you pull it together, because I think the least we have to do is have the conversation at some next meeting, who's ever meeting it's appropriate for.
Okay. Nate, just real quick to correct that, but they will not help us with the zoning on it because we're under a deadline to get that property zoned. We won't be through the Tracy process or RFP process, whatever that is. So we're still going to have to go ahead and decide what we're going to zone it aside from that. And that's a state law. We don't have a lot of time on deciding that zoning.
I thought we already did zone it.
Well, isn't it we left it as R4, didn't we?
No, we left it institutional.
Oh,
You
yes.
apply it. The statute says you apply a temporary zoning district. So it's institutional right now. And you have 1 year to do a formal zoning designation on that. So 1 year from the actual adoption, we have to have a formal designation on that property.
Okay,
Well, that doesn't mean we can't change it again, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
So
then I'm not worried.
yeah, it's our property. We're not gonna lose our mind and do something stupid again.
Well said.
about right.
So I don't have to give you the business phone number because you probably already have it, correct, from the
I
website?
have, yep.
All right, very good. Thank you, Julie.
Julie, is there any other of did you want to go over anything from parks, or just open it up to any further staff questions?
I don't have Dan's report pulled up in front of me. I know that from the park side of it, that things went pretty good with the Chris Kindle Mart. We're actually going to have a meeting with them and go through that plan so we know next year how to plan for it, so we can work our schedules around that. We had a meeting with SBAA about going on a boat, and they have offered to have their volunteers actually pull the goat out. But and then we're going through, Eric is going through and putting together a plan on all the SBA events so we can schedule, and that goes to the Parks Committee, where we can just schedule accordingly. And we know, hey, we're not going to be brushing trees this month because we're going to be doing this, and we can allocate the time then. So it's not this year was a little bit of a surprise. So some stuff didn't get done. So there's that process that's going through. He went through and inventoried all the Christmas decorations, which was a request of the Parks Committee. I met with Eric and Cody from the ice rink to go through the operations out there, met with Brian Fitzgerald today from the pond hockey tournament. So I guess as far as parks goes, things are just moving along. I like I said, I don't know what was in the report, but they had a busy month, and a lot of it right now is the paperwork to kind of get it to the point where everybody knows what's expected. And if somebody walks out of that position and somebody else walks in, we've got operating policies. We miss standard operating protocols in our departments, and that department is doing really good at making sure they get them in place so things run smoother.
Have they started flooding?
Not yet, but we had the conversation on it about when we're going to do it and what needs to happen. It's supposed to get really warm next week, I think. So I think any flooding right now would be futile. So
I don't know. Oh, okay. I don't see that warm trend, but okay.
Yeah, I don't trust the weathermen, so that's just what I'm told.
Okay, so we're not having ice for Christmas.
No, I don't. I can ask Cody if he planned to flood it yet, but I think I don't know if he is. Just because of the fact that it's warm. I know he has hired some staff out there, so he'll be able to have some help out there. And our crew, you know, helps as needed. We have that in a agreement plan. But I can certainly check on that and let anybody know if they're interested.
Okay,
It would, looking at the weather, it seems like it's kind of silly not to do that, but there could be other very, very good reasons why they're not doing it. I would see whatever you could do to nudge that along to see if we can have a ice for Christmas, if possible. If anybody else feels that way, that's just me.
I definitely feel that way. People utilize it between Christmas and New Year's. If we have ice, it's packed.
I agree.
Okay. I agree as well.
Since everybody's interested, I'll find out. I'll send an email to all of you so you can tell all your family and friends. Just make sure you don't reply to me. So
Scott's against it, apparently. He didn't say anything.
No.
Okay, thank you, Julie. That leaves us with committee reports. And for administrative committee, I have nothing to add at this time. Julie, I would ask you to please walk us through the rest of the list, as I am in transit now with my daughter and I don't have the listing in front of me.
sure. So administrative committee did not meet. Coastal byways. Mary, did you guys meet?
Mary left the meeting already.
Okay, so I will say
Yep.
coastal byways, they actually got their maps up, so they are distributing their brochures. DCEDC would have been Mary. We don't know if she met. Emergency Management Planning Committee, that starts next month. That one takes effect, different name, but it takes effect in January. Finance Committee did not meet. Fire Board did not meet. Ad hoc Green Tier Legacy Community met. Their minutes are in the packet. Historical Society. Scott,
They
did you
did,
guys meet?
they did meet on Thursday, the first, just kind of a short meeting. We barely had a quorum. Chris Kindle Market, the first weekend, which is, we're eyeing the second, so, but the first weekend was about about the same as last year's, as revenue coming in. Shadow update, they're moving nowhere on that thing, as did some planning for next season, so that was about it.
Okay. Ad hoc Land Acquisition Oversight Committee, they met with the Parks and Planning. We had a meeting in the beginning of the month and just kind of update on that. But Chad, did you have anything else to add with that one?
No, I think most people were there or heard about it or saw your slideshow, so I think it's covered.
Library, Scott just talked about that. Marina Committee, did you have anything on that one, Scott?
Minutes are of both meetings, both November and December's, are in the packet. Any questions from anybody? We made a lot of newspaper, took a lot of newspapers.
Uncle Scott,
I
stirring the
think we're all
pot.
just waiting to hear what emerges after you reconvene.
Yeah.
I'm just thankful for the committee process.
Leaving town, Rob.
We're selling the marina.
All right, well, whenever the committee reconvenes, we'll be interested to hear what comes forth.
Marina Fest Committee, anything on that one, Scott?
Minutes are also in the packet. We let the nonprofits know that 2023 will be the last year of village participation. So they're at this point a bit confused about how they're going to run things, but we do have a meeting the end of January to discuss it further.
Okay. Ad hoc Outdoor Rec and Transportation Planning Committee. I think we were waiting until we had the official appointments. But Nate, did you have anything else to add to that?
I think last board meeting, I said I was going to be on a podcast. I was on that podcast. I think it's kind of interesting. If you ever listen to the Pulsecast, that was talking a lot about transportation.
Okay. Parks, Property and Streets Committee, Rob.
Nothing but beyond what's in the packet for me right now.
Okay. Personnel Committee did not meet. Plan Commission, Denise.
Does anybody have any questions on the work we've been doing or the poor work we've been doing?
I do it just to get insulted by Chad.
I'm smiling, Chad, even though I'm not on camera.
I'm smiling too.
Okay.
SBAA. The minutes are in the packet. Tourism Zone Commission, minutes are in the packet, and Sewer and Water Utility Committee did not meet.
Not me. Correct.
Will, because we haven't met in such a long time, are we for sure going to have a January meeting? I just feel a little out of touch,
I think we should.
like, you know.
Yeah, I agree with you, Denise. I agree with you. We've canceled 2 months in a row now. We need to have a meeting, and whatever there is to discuss, is discussed, but it'll allow any questions or dialogue. So let's just count on a meeting at the regular scheduled time in January.
Okay, we'll probably just put it as open discussion or something. If there's
There's
no
got to
agenda
be
item.
some agenda items that we haven't been talking about, because that just doesn't seem right.
But-
That's a department then just all out on their own.
Yeah, I know they've just been doing their year and annual things, but we will find something and we'll put together an agenda.
Okay.
Okay. I will motion that we accept the committee reports.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. At 8:17 PM, I will motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Merry